Hi everyone, this is Jack from Maths Forge, and in today's lesson we're going to be doing solving quadratic equations by factorising. So let's take a look at our first example. Here we're being asked to solve x squared minus 49 is equal to 0. So you should know that x squared minus 49 is known as the difference of two squares. Now the difference of two squares factorises into two brackets. And what goes into these brackets you can actually get from the equation itself. So here we have an x squared. What goes into the bracket is the square root of x squared, which is just x. So this goes to the left-hand side of each bracket. And we have the square root of 49, which is a 7, and that goes into the right-hand side of each bracket. Now the difference of two squares factorizes into two brackets where one of them is a plus and one of them is a negative. And now if we solve for this equation, how you solve a quadratic equation once you've factorized it is you take each bracket and equal it to 0. So I'm going to take the x plus 7 bracket and equal it to 0. I'm going to take the x minus 7 bracket and equal it to 0. And if you rearrange for x in both cases, you'll get the following. For the x plus 7, we do minus 7 from both sides. This is going to leave us with x on the left, and on the right, it's going to leave us with negative 7. And for the x minus 7, we plus 7 to both sides. This is going to leave us with x is equal to positive 7. And these are our solutions to this quadratic equation. And if we check our answer, there it is. If the factorization of completing the square didn't make sense to you, check out the lesson on factorizing quadratics. We'll do another one-star example. Here we have a quadratic trinomial, tri meaning there are three parts to it. And to solve this by factorizing, you should know that quadratic trinomials factorize into two brackets. And since there's an x squared here and the coefficient of it is 1, so that means the number in front of x squared is 1, we can just go ahead and write x and x to the left-hand side of each bracket. Now, the numbers that go into this bracket come from the 81 and the 18. So, the 81 and the 18. The two numbers that go here have to multiply to give you the 81, and they have to add to give you the 18. So you have to think about these numbers in terms of trial and error, but there is a quicker way to do it. If I start from 10 plus 8, this gives me 18, but 10 times 8 gives me 80. So this combination of numbers do not work. 10 and 8 do not work. What I'd like to do next is I subtract the 10 by 1, and it becomes 9. And I add 1 onto the 8, so that becomes 9 as well. So we have 9 plus 9, which is 18, and 9 times 9, which is 81. And these are our numbers, 9 and 9. So into the brackets go x plus 9 and x plus 9. Now, when you're solving for x in this case, in the previous example, I said you should take each bracket and equal it to 0. But in this case, since both of the brackets are the same, all you have to do is take one of the brackets and equal it to 0. And if we rearrange for x, we'll do minus 9 from both sides. We end up with the following. X is equal to minus 9. And this is our only solution. When you have two brackets that are the same when factorizing, that means you have a single solution for your quadratic equation. And if we check our answer, there it is. Now we'll do a two-star example, again with a quadratic trinomial. We know that this factorizes into two brackets, which is equal to 0. And since it's an x squared, both of the brackets are going to have an x in them to the left. And now we need to think of two numbers that multiply to give us negative 20, and they add to give us 8. Now, the only way you're going to get a negative number through multiplication is if one of the numbers is positive and the other number is negative. So I can see here that if I add 10 to negative 2, I end up with 8. And if I multiply 10 to negative 2, I end up with negative 20. So these are our two numbers, 10 and negative 2. So it's going to be positive 10 and negative 2. And now once we factorized, we equal each bracket to 0 and solve for x. So we have the x plus 10, which is equal to 0, and the x minus 2, which is also equal to 0. Rearranging for x in both equations gives us the following. For the x plus 10, we're going to subtract 10 from both sides first. This is going to leave us with x is equal to negative 10. And for the x minus 2, we're going to add 2 to both sides to find x. And this is now going to give us x is equal to positive 2. And these are our two solutions. So if we check our answer, there it is. Now we'll do a 3-star example. This is a quadratic trinomial where the coefficient of x squared is greater than 1. In this case, it's a 6. So how can we go about solving this using factorizing? Well, the first step here, rather than trying to factorize it into 2 brackets, is to divide by 6 throughout the equation. So we're going to divide by 6 throughout the equation. And the reason we can do this is because there is a common factor of a 6 in each of these terms. I can divide the 6x squared by a 6, the 6x by a 6, and the 12 by a 6. And of course, the 0 divided by 6 stays as 0. So after introducing the divided by 6, we end up with the following. X squared plus x minus 2 is equal to 0. Now we can go ahead and factorize this quadratic trinomial into 2 brackets. And we need to think of 2 numbers that multiply to give us negative 2, this number at the end here, and they add to give us the number in front of the x. And since there's no number there, it's actually a 1. So the 2 numbers I'm thinking of that multiply to give us negative 2, don't forget, to get a negative number through multiplication, one of them has to be a positive and the other one has to be a negative, is going to be 2 and minus 1. 2 minus 1 gives us 1, and 2 times negative 1 gives us negative 2. So our 2 numbers are going to be positive 2 and negative 1. And if we equal each factor to 0 and solve, we should get our answers for x. So for the x plus 2, I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. This is going to leave us with x is equal to negative 2. And for the x minus 1, I'm going to add 1 to both sides. This is now going to leave us with x is equal to 1. And if we check our answer, there it is. We'll do one more 3-star example. Here we're being asked to solve 2x squared minus 13x plus 20, which is equal to 0. So this is a quadratic trinomial that we cannot simplify in terms of division. So even though the coefficient of x squared is a 2, we cannot divide the equation by 2 since this 13 here is not a multiple of 2. So how can we do this? If you remember the lesson on factorizing quadratics where x squared has a coefficient in front of it, to factorize such a quadratic, we first begin by multiplying the 2 and the 20 together. This is going to give us 40. And I'm going to write it here to the right-hand side. We then take our middle number, this negative 13, and we have to find 2 numbers that multiply to give us 40 and add to give us negative 13. We can call these numbers that we're looking for our magic numbers. Since we're multiplying these 2 numbers to get 40, which is a positive number, and we're adding them to get a negative number, both of these numbers have to be negative. And just thinking about the factors of 40, I can see that minus 8, minus 5 are going to be our magic numbers. Minus 8 and minus 5. Minus 8 minus 5 is negative 13, and minus 8 times negative 5 is 40. So what we do with these magic numbers next is we rewrite this quadratic equation, but with the middle term, this minus 13x, broken up into the magic numbers. So instead of minus 13x, I'm going to write minus 8x minus 5x. And then we have a plus 20. And this is going to be equal to 0. The next step is to factorize your first 2 terms of the left-hand side of this equation and factorize your last 2 terms. And they're going to factorize into a single bracket. So that looks like this. The highest common factor of 2x squared minus 8x is 2x. And this leaves us with a single bracket, an x on the inside, minus 4. And I can see that the highest common factor for the last 2 terms is going to be negative 5. And the reason I want to take out negative 5 is because it's going to force this positive to become a negative. And you'll see why that's important in a second. So I'm going to take out minus 5. That's going to give us a single bracket. This is going to leave us with x here. And taking out a negative from a positive leaves us with a negative. 20 divided by 5 gives us 4, which is equal to 0. You know you've done this correctly if your 2 brackets at this stage are the same. So now for the final stage, we can take the terms outside of the brackets and form a single bracket with them. So it's going to be 2x minus 5. And the second bracket is going to be formed from the x minus 4. And this is now equal to 0. And just as we've done in the previous example, if we take each bracket and equal it to 0, solve for x in both cases, we should get our answers. So for the 2x minus 5, I'm going to add 5 to both sides first. This is going to leave us with 2x is equal to 5. And for the second step, I'm going to divide both sides by 2 to get rid of this 2 in front of the x. This is now going to leave us with x is equal to 5 over 2. Now you can write it as 5 over 2, 2.5, or 2.5. As long as you get an equivalent answer, you should be fine. For the x minus 4 now, I'm going to add 4 to both sides. And this is going to give us x is equal to 4. So these are our two answers. X is equal to 5 over 2 and x is equal to 4. And if we check our answer, there it is. If you found this method complicated or if you're seeing it for the first time, I strongly recommend that you check out the lesson on factorizing quadratics, where the coefficient of x squared is greater than 1. You can find the video for this in the practice sessions or go through our YouTube channel and search for the video. But that's it for our lesson on solving quadratics by factorizing.